Ezra Levant here. I'm in London. Tommy Robinson, let me give you the headline right at the top. He's been committed to stand trial again for contempt of court. He'll be back in court here on July 4th and 5th. I think it's a 2-day trial scheduled, and this stems back to those incidents back at Leeds a year ago. As you know, he's already been held in contempt for that, served 10 weeks in solitary confinement for that. The Court of Appeal has quashed that ruling, and yet he has to go stand trial again. I don't know if in the entire history of the UK this has ever been done before. It's so punitive, and there's no cause for it. The trial outside which he was reporting was not disrupted in any way. This is clearly punitive. So that's the news, and you can find other videos that we go in some depth on that. But I want to focus in on something I mentioned in passing in another video, and that is the media culture here in the UK. You know the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear, did it make a sound? That's sort of a Zen question. I mean, of course it made a sound, but if no one knows it made a sound, it was like it didn't make a sound. And that's how the media is. If they report on something, you know about it, but if they simply ignore something, how do you know it even happened? And if they all get together to tell a pack of lies about something, how can you ever know the truth? These are all different ways of describing their treatment of Tommy Robinson. When he does amazing things, when thousands of people show up for him at an event, if the press can't say anything negative, they'll say nothing at all. But if he's in any sort of trouble, the press will go to town. And there was about 1,000 people here today, maybe more on the streets. I'm sure out of those 1,000, there were 1 or 2 who were a bit rough, maybe 1 or 2 who had a drink. That will be on the front page of the newspapers. It is the worst media in the free world. I watch Russia Today, that's Putin's state broadcaster. I watch TRT, the Turkish state broadcaster. I watch Al Jazeera. The British media, especially the state-run media here, is worse than those. I know you're thinking, how could it be worse than those? They are more demonic in their cult-like groupthink. It's not even that they hate Tommy. Of course they hate Tommy, they're leftists. But the groupthink of it is astounding. So I mentioned in my other video, I was live tweeting from court, and obviously they didn't like that. So one of them literally interrupted the court by having a note passed to the judge, asking the judge to stop me from tweeting. And the judges went out, conferred, came back and said, yeah, no, we're still allowed to tweet in this court. And I knew that because I had permission in previous visits to the court to tweet, discussions with senior officials in the court, both judges and clerks and security, so I knew that. But just get into the mind for a second of a journalist. So you see Ezra here from the Rebel, Jessica, our student journalist from the Rebel, other journalists here, and we're not towing the media party line. So we might be conservative, we might be right-wing, we might be this or that. Whatever we are, we're different. We've broken the monopoly, right?
Oh, I love it.
Because until we came along, it was just the think-alikes. And they're so outraged, and they're sitting there in court, and instead of paying attention to the court, they're reading my tweets on their phone. Hang on, mate, you're supposed to be following the trial, not following me following the trial. And imagine them getting more and more and more irritated. And then finally sending a note to the judge. How dare they, by the way? By what right would they interrupt a judge from listening to a trial? The chutzpah of that is astounding. And wouldn't you know it, the judges broke to confer. And they came back and said everything was fine. But what? Would Al Jazeera do that? Would RT, would Xinhua of China do that? I don't know. That is the thuggish tactic of a state broadcaster. Anyways, during the break, there's this little guy who works for the BBC named Dominic Casciani. I don't know if he's like 5'4", so I shouldn't make fun, I'm only 5'9". And he's like this angry little man, and he was so outraged that I complained about him complaining about me. But I should tell you, and I asked him about this in front of all his friends, because like all the British media party were like, oh, we don't like you Canadians, go home Canadians. And I said, Dominic, you're a government journalist, that's different from a journalist. If you have any sort of qualifier before the word journalist, you take away from it. I said, Dominic, you're a government journalist. Will you say in front of your peers here, will you admit to them that last time I was here at the Old Bailey, you actually complained to the police? And it is true. I don't know if you recall, but last time I was here, I looked out one of these windows from the cafeteria and I saw a crowd below, and I took a very short vid of the crowd. And Dominic Casciani of the BBC, again, he didn't ignore me or debate me or counter me. I swear to God, I've got the email. He literally wrote to the police to tattle. They wrote to the police to tattle last time. They wrote to the judge to tattle this time. Obviously, I'm here and I'm coming back on July 4th. And I tell you that story for 3 reasons. Number one, to show that you just can't trust the mainstream media. I mean, that's not even journalism, that's extreme censorship. Number two, I want to let you know that they obviously think our reporting is important enough that they want to stop it. If no one was reading it or watching it, they wouldn't care. So it's a bit of a feather in our cap, and I'll check my Twitter stats. Last time I covered Tommy's trial, I think it was like 12 million impressions for my videos and tweets. So the BBC hates that, they're trying to censor it. And the last point is that we're going to come back and do this again and again until Tommy is finally free. But what a message of how Canada and the United States will go. That this kind of gotcha, deplatforming, extreme activism, masquerading as journalism, I don't think it's this bad in Canada and the United States yet, but as I've said in another video, coming to the UK is like my own private time machine. I come here and I see how bad the CBC will be in Canada, how bad the ABC will be in Australia, when I see how bad the BBC is here. They're literally calling the police on my journalism. When I see how they're literally interrupting criminal trials because they don't like someone having a different opinion. I think that what's happening to Tommy is terrible, both the abuse of process by the police, the prosecutors, the courts, but the fact that the media, who should stand up for a fellow citizen journalist, is in fact cheering his censorship and trying to censor any media who cover him is actually, to me, the scariest thing of all in this trip. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant. Well, it wasn't just me here. I brought a bunch of friends with me, a student journalist, Jessica Aviamini from Australia, Andrew Lawton from London, Ontario, Cassandra Fairbanks and Pardes Lev from Washington. We brought Jordan James down from Manchester. We had a whole team of independent citizen journalists here. And the total cost to bring them over here was about £20,000 or about $30,000. If you can help me, everyone came economy class, we didn't pay anyone a fee. If you can help me cover that by going to realreporters.uk, I'd be very grateful. And if we can cover the cost this time, I'll do it again in July 4th, because we got to cover Tommy's trial then. Thanks.